In my previous life, just after I won a 20 million lottery, the apocalypse arrived, barely surviving the extreme cold by relying on the supplies I had stockpiled, yet I couldn't escape the betrayal from my boyfriend and best friend. I died in the second year of the apocalypse, reborn into this life, watching their pitiful state of hunger and cold as they turn on each other like dogs. I couldn't help but open another self-heating hot pot, pure bliss, creak, due to the sudden brake. Inertia threw my whole body forward before the seatbelt yanked me back, making my back slam heavily against the car seat. Are you insane? Can't you drive properly? Didn't you see a car coming? Listening to the taxi driver's curses, I looked out the window to see a muttering homeless man being dragged away, faintly hearing words like apocalypse. Watching these familiar scenes unfold, had I been reborn? The date on my phone read July 11th, 2035, 1. Which meant there was only 1 month left until the apocalypse. The driver saw Lara's dazed expression and thought she was frightened. Hey, are you okay? Hearing the driver's voice, she finally snapped out of it. I'm fine. He also smiled at the driver. The driver wiped non-existent sweat from his forehead. Looking outside where the sun was already blazing at just 8 a.m., he couldn't help but complain. What kind of weather is this? Why is it so hot this year? It would be nice if it were cooler. Actually, it's not that bad, not really hot. After saying this, she happily moved to a spot where she could bask in the sunlight. The driver watched her movements and sighed inwardly again about how wonderful youth is. I genuinely don't feel hot right now. After all, surviving for a whole year in temperatures of -50 to 60 degrees, now this sun feels incredibly warm. In my previous life, I also thought the weather this year was unusually hot at this time. So much so that I wished I could stuff my whole body into a refrigerator. No one expected that a month later, it would start snowing heavily, just when everyone thought the snow would stop soon. Who would have guessed it would only get heavier, and the temperature would keep dropping? It rained for a whole year. Never thought I'd survive the extreme cold, only to be killed by that despicable couple. And now I'm on my way to claim a massive lottery prize. Yesterday, while passing a lottery station with a colleague, I was impulsively pulled in to buy a randomly selected ticket together. Who knew I'd directly win 20 million? In my past life, after claiming the prize, I was sweet-talked by a scumbag who said he'd invest it, only to end up throwing good money after bad, gone without a trace. Now that I've been given a second chance, I swear I'll make them pay the price they deserve. But the silver lining is that I hadn't yet told that scumbag about my lottery win. I originally planned to wait until after receiving the award to tell him, to give him a surprise, but now, the surprise is unnecessary. The surprise can still be arranged. Arriving at the lottery center, I walked in quietly. By the time all the procedures were completed, it was almost noon. Seeing the extra 16 million in my bank account, I inexplicably felt at ease. Time is running out. The most urgent task now is to find a personal apocalypse shelter. The apocalypse began with extreme cold, followed immediately by extreme heat, causing snow to melt rapidly. Water levels kept rising continuously. Just as I was preparing to move out from my previous residence, that scumbag tied me up, saying I had no more use and keeping me would just waste food before abandoning me. Only then did I realize my so-called perfect boyfriend and best friend had been secretly hooking up behind my back all along. My phone vibrated. When I took it out and saw the message, I felt physically sick, utterly disgusted. Baby, you mentioned having a surprise yesterday. Can you tell me now? Reading Jules' message, I couldn't help but scoff internally. A surprise, more like a shock. Want that instead. And seeing the $3,000 she just transferred to Serenity last night suddenly made my heart ache with regret. This is what I've painstakingly saved up. Being an orphan since childhood made me quite introverted, so as long as Serenity is kind to me, I basically can't refuse any request. You're out of your mind. Suddenly I feel like I'm the universe's ultimate simp. This is a disease that needs treatment. Resist the urge to block them. Now isn't the time to burn bridges. Then I directly contacted the real estate agent. The top priority is finding a suitable shelter for myself in the apocalypse. Fortunately, the two of them don't know where to meet privately, so they probably won't return soon. Otherwise, completely avoiding them would be somewhat challenging. I don't want them to notice anything yet. Otherwise, how can we give them a surprise? The apartment I lived in during my previous life was on a higher floor, which is why it wasn't buried under heavy snow. Many lower floors were directly covered by ice and snow, with people freezing to death before they could even attempt self-rescue, so the floor must be high, and the neighborhood must be safe. The apocalypse itself isn't the most terrifying thing. What's worse is human nature. I once witnessed several burly men breaking into a household, and soon after, the smell of meat wafted out. In that environment, where could one possibly find meat? The source was all too obvious. I don't know how long these apocalyptic disasters will last, but I'll strive to survive as long as possible. She still wants to see our country's magnificent landscapes, and I believe the country has never given up on us. The agent I was dealing with was relatively young, and didn't show any disdain when seeing my shabby appearance. Upon hearing my housing requirements, they only paused briefly before enthusiastically introducing properties to me. This is a unit in Emerald Court, on the top floor. The owner has settled abroad, so you can move in directly with just your luggage. If you wish to make renovations, you just need to restore it to its original condition when the contract expires. After listening to the salesperson, I was very satisfied with this house and signed the contract directly. After getting the keys, seeing there was still time, I rushed to the renovation company again. After extreme cold comes extreme heat, and what comes after that is unknown, after all. I didn't live that long in my previous life, but surviving known risks is still achievable. The first thing now is to renovate the house, adding insulation layers everywhere. Anyway, money is no object now. When the apocalypse comes, this money will just be worthless paper. All materials are of the highest quality. The boss claims they can withstand temperatures from -50 to 50 degrees, but who knows if that's true? It remains to be verified. The doors and windows are all explosion-proof and privacy-grade, and importantly, each has 2 layers installed, Miss Alara. Ours is vault-level security, 1 layer is enough. Watching the boss hesitate to speak, I smiled, putting on an air of being naive but wealthy. It's fine, boss, just install 2 layers, I've got money, too. After saying that, I directly transferred the deposit to the boss. Hearing the sound of the money arriving, the boss immediately shut his mouth. What else can I say? Let's get to work, boss. You must get this done for me in half a month. I'm in a hurry. The boss initially wanted to refuse because the materials were hard to find, but the generous payment made him agree. When I first saw this house, another advantage was that it was on the top floor with a huge terrace attached. You can build a greenhouse-like structure with privacy materials, making it completely impossible to see inside from the outside, also preventing anyone from using drones for reconnaissance in a post-apocalyptic scenario. Then install some solar panels. Planning to use them for growing vegetables. In extreme cold weather, vegetables become extremely scarce. Just imagine having hot pot on a cold day with some bok choy. It makes your mouth water. Then came various heaters, and we even bought several large freezers. While they're useless in extreme cold, they'll come in handy during extreme heat. Not sure how long we can stay at this base, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. Store them all in one room and connect the solar power circuit to that room. Opened Taba and immediately ordered 10 sets of cold-proof suits, 10 sets of heat insulation suits, along with hand warmers, cooling patches, and stocked up on essential medicines, thinking about the extreme heat coming later, when the accumulated snow would directly turn into vast waters. I ordered 2 more speedboats just in case. In case we really encounter any emergencies, it would be good for escaping. Then I also purchased over a dozen charging devices, along with tablets and memory cards, all fully loaded with novels and TV series. I also bought more than 10 bags of cat litter. During extreme cold, when pipes freeze and toilets can't flush, I find cat litter essential for personal hygiene. Then I proceeded to buy all sorts of daily necessities like toilet paper. Next came various self-heating meals. I ordered every favorite dish I saw, eventually losing track of how much I'd purchased. After finishing everything, my stomach growled, so I ordered takeout from that place I usually can't afford. After finishing the meal, take out paper and pen to plan what you need to prepare for tomorrow. Looking at the balance in the bank card, the originally anxious heart calmed down a bit. Give yourself some encouragement. It's okay, Alara, you can do this. There's still time. You'll definitely get through this safely. After waking up the next day, I casually had some breakfast and first went to the car rental place to rent an SUV. Although I could have others help with deliveries, people's intentions are hard to guard against. It's best not to let others know about stockpiling supplies. I also considered that a small truck could carry more, but small trucks frequently entering and exiting the neighborhood would be quite noticeable, at worst. I'll just make a few extra trips myself. Even after completing the paperwork, it was only 9:30. But the heat waves on the ground already seemed to be boiling, so I hurriedly drove to the city's largest wholesale market. I bought 20 bags each of rice and flour, along with various seasonings by the box, assorted canned fruits, dried fruits, snacks, beverages, and more. The shopkeeper followed behind, filling out the order form as we went. I told the shopkeeper I was running a small convenience store, though he seemed a bit surprised that a store owner would come to the market for supplies. He didn't say anything since there was money to be made. After confirming what I might have missed, I suddenly thought of vegetable seeds. After asking the shop owner where to buy vegetable seeds, I pulled some of the items and left first. The owner kindly gave me a small card as a gift. There was no other way. There were simply too many things. Even if I made several trips every day, it would still take days to move everything. Politely declined the boss's offer to help with deliveries. In the apocalypse, I've grown accustomed to not trusting others. After buying a large quantity of seeds, drove back to the current residential area, went straight to the underground garage, gradually loaded items onto a handcart, and pushed them into the elevator. The next few days followed the same pattern. It took a full 5 days to move everything from the market back into the house and get it properly stored. We tried our best to avoid people, fortunately. There were few residents in the neighborhood to begin with, and we didn't encounter anyone while moving things. The online purchases started arriving one after another, forcing us to make multiple trips by car to collect them. During this period, those two people barely acknowledged me either, which suited me just fine as I couldn't be bothered to engage. After a few perfunctory exchanges, the conversations died out. Every day I'm planning how to survive longer in the apocalypse. It's truly a race against time. There are only 10 days left until the apocalypse. I've thought countless times about whether to report this to the authorities, but it sounds too horrifying. In the end, I decided to anonymously post about the impending apocalypse on major social platforms. It's the most I can do right now. It was trending hot at first, but after refreshing later, it got taken down completely. Probably the authorities stepped in to intervene, however. They later issued an announcement stating that observed planetary changes might trigger extreme weather, advising everyone to stock up on more food supplies. Seeing this made me relieved. It seems the country has also noticed the current weather issues and is taking preventive measures. In the apocalypse, human nature is even more terrifying, so it's essential to prepare some weapons for self-defense. 3. Stun batons, tasers, and broadswords. Broadswords aren't easy to obtain. It took connections and a lot of money to finally acquire a few. Once in hand, they felt perfectly balanced, definitely worth the money. Thought of something and bought several more pinhole cameras, installing them all around the outside of the house, then took a few more and returned to the previously rented apartment, installing them for 360 degrees coverage without blind spots, ensuring the ability to enjoy their loving life during the apocalypse later. There are still 5 days until the apocalypse begins, and she has most things well prepared. As for the water supply, we collect and store water every day, and the vegetables on the rooftop are sprouting quite impressively. There are 2 days left until the apocalypse, and the weather is getting hotter and hotter. Just as I was enjoying a delicious lunch at a high-end restaurant, my phone rang. I picked it up and saw that it was a call from that scumbag. Of course, this act had to continue. I waited until Jules was almost losing patience before leisurely answering the call. Alara, what's going on with you? Why did it take you so long to answer the phone? And here I was thinking of bringing you a gift when I got back from my business trip. I'll be back in a couple of days. Remember to buy some things to celebrate when I get back. You can invite your friends over too. The more, the merrier. Jules issued his orders and then hung up without another word. My friends, I only have one friend, Serenity, want to celebrate, then I'll satisfy you, flaunting a large cardboard box stuffed with sponge, topped with snacks, fruits, and the like, deliberately chose to pass by a crowd of elderly folks during peak hours, generously sharing some with them. The grateful aunties even offered to help carry it. But of course I politely declined, after all. There's just a few things on top. Moving them would definitely expose the truth. With 1 day left before the apocalypse outbreak, I'm already comfortably nestled in my recliner, watching the surveillance. The extreme cold struck at midnight, and many people never woke up again that night. Watching the apartment door open, seeing Serenity and Jules appear together, how had I not suspected anything in my previous life? Seeing no trace of me in the apartment, their movements grew increasingly bold. Soon, the two were rolling on the sofa. Serenity, though clearly unable to wait any longer, still pretended to resist. Jules, this isn't right. What if Alara comes back and sees us? Still putting on an act, she gave a half-hearted push. Darling, instead of worrying about her catching us, you should be worrying about yourself. Without another word, he immediately pounced, unable to bear the cringeworthy scene. I turned off the surveillance feed on my phone and started preparing dinner. Let's have hot pot today. If we don't eat it now, it'll only get worse later since the smell is quite strong. After arranging all the ingredients on the table, I picked up my tablet to watch a drama while cooking the hot pot. Watching the bubbling red oil in the pot, the complex emotions about the impending apocalypse were somewhat eased. The phone beside me kept vibrating. No doubt it was messages from them. What's the rush? They'll have plenty to worry about later. This is just the beginning. After finishing everything, I treated myself to a nice, relaxing bath. After all, this kind of life ends today, and who knows if there will be another chance in the future. The money wasn't all spent yet, so I exchanged the remaining amount for gold bars, keeping only a little cash. In case the apocalypse ends one day, I need to be prepared to embrace a new beginning and a new life. Seeing the two people constantly messaging me, I just replied that she was temporarily sent on a business trip and wouldn't be back for a few days. Regardless of their reactions, I turned off my phone directly, woke up in the middle of sleep feeling increasingly cold, shivering from the chill. The apocalypse has arrived. Quickly turned on the prepared heater, electric blanket, and space heater, walked to the window, nothing but the faint glow of streetlights amidst boundless darkness. Snowflakes began drifting from the sky, starting as sparse specks before growing heavier. Cold, so cold, I dragged another thick quilt over myself, wrapping up tightly, and only then did warmth return, making me drowsy with comfort. The next day, I was woken by the alarm clock. As I've always maintained the habit of waking up on time, putting on thermal wear, I looked outside at the blanket of white, where even a few children were having a snowball fight downstairs. Laughing with pure joy, I furrowed my brows, sensing that the snowfall seemed even heavier than in my previous life. Regardless of whether any unforeseen events might occur, we'll just have to take things one step at a time. The experienced elders, observing the unusual weather and recalling the official announcements earlier, weren't as optimistic as the younger generation. They instructed their families to stock up on supplies promptly, which is why all major supermarkets are now overcrowded. The snow kept falling as I took out my phone and turned it on, seeing 99 plus unread WeChat messages, and couldn't help but smile. I immediately made a video call, which was answered the moment I dialed, saw both of them wrapped in separate blankets, shivering. Jules questioned in a very unpleasant tone, "Alara, where have you been? You're not answering your phone. We're freezing to death here. Hurry back and bring some supplies when you come." Looking at them like this, I fought back my disgust and put on a pitiful expression. "Why are you being so harsh? You don't even care about how I'm doing right now." Yesterday I rushed back overnight, and as soon as I arrived it started snowing heavily. I had to stay at a hotel, and my phone died. If I'd known you'd be like this, I wouldn't have come back at all. Serenity thought this was unacceptable, with such terrible weather outside. If she didn't come back to deliver supplies, what would they do? Secretly tugged at Jules' sleeve and gave him a meaningful look. "Alara, that's not what Jules meant. He's just overly concerned about you." So his tone came across a bit harsh. Seeing my slightly softened expression, Serenity felt a surge of smug satisfaction. What a fool, easily pacified with just a few comforting words. "Alara, come back quickly. The weather is too severe now. If you return, we can look out for each other." I put on a touched expression. "Okay, I'll come back right away. Wait for me. I'll be quick." After saying that, I immediately hung up the phone, afraid I might vomit if I delayed even a second. As for the supplies, just wait slowly. Last life they sucked me dry, but without my foolishness this time. Let's see how long they can last. It's too cold to cook, so I took out a self-heating hot pot and quietly watched the surveillance, watching them devour instant noodles and gnaw on bread with big, voracious bites, perhaps finding it too cold and hard. They discarded half of it after taking a few bites. Eat up. Judging by their wasteful behavior, they'll likely run out of food by tomorrow, but credit where it's due, that insulation layer was totally worth it. The boss indeed didn't lie to her. Although the room was still cold, it felt quite warm compared to the outside. Just sticking a thermometer outside showed it was nearly minus 40 degrees, while indoors it was only minus 5 degrees. But I don't plan to keep the heating system running constantly. I'll rely on my body to gradually adapt to the extreme cold. While everyone was out panic buying, I also pretended to go out, not wanting to stand out too much and arouse suspicion, for, upon returning home, I felt like I came back to life. The wind outside stung my exposed skin, and the snow had already reached my calves. It would likely be waist-high by tomorrow. There were many snowplows on the road, but they seemed futile. My phone kept ringing, but I couldn't be bothered to answer, leisurely preparing tonight's dinner instead. Watching the two of them go crazy on the surveillance feed made my movements noticeably lighter. "Let's have steak today. The little sun's rays make this whole area feel warm and cozy." Casually picked up the phone, took a photo, created a group chat with both of them, and sent the picture. Then turned off the phone immediately, feeling like I've teased them enough. Finally answered the call. "Alara, what do you mean? Where are you? Come back quickly." Hearing Jules' furious voice, I burst out laughing. "Me, of course I'm in a place you'll never find. You and her can just wait there to die." Serenity beside me quickly turned to Jules. What did Alara say? Looking at this woman before him, Jules was filled with regret. What else can I say? She knows about us. She hung up directly. That bitch. Serenity's face turned pale upon hearing this. Seeing that it was already dark outside with the wind howling against the windows, she steeled her heart. "We must go out and stock up on supplies, or we'll starve to death before we even freeze." Jules reluctantly followed her out the door, but since everyone had gone shopping during the day, it took hours of squeezing through crowds just to buy some instant noodles and snacks. The heavy snow never stopped, only growing heavier. Every day I train my physical endurance. So if I really encounter those people, I'll at least have some ability to protect myself. At the very least, I'll drag a few down with me. Thinking of this, I trained even more fiercely. During that time, those two kept contacting me too, from initial apologies to curses, ending with them turning on each other. I never replied. I just regularly posted my daily meals in the group chat, nothing more. On the 10th day of the apocalypse outbreak, as people couldn't go out, many had already run out of food. There were constant messages in the residents group asking who had food to spare, willing to pay high prices. At this point, food means survival. How could anyone possibly respond to such requests? I was still in that same group when suddenly I saw an older woman post a message. "That young girl in Building 2, Unit 2502 probably has some. I saw her moving in big boxes before. And she used to share a lot too. She was quite generous." The fish took the bait. Then they saw a group of people directly approaching to knock on the door. Frightened by the crowd, they didn't dare open it and kept explaining they had no food left, but the crowd wouldn't back down. Someone started it, and then the group broke in, taking all their food by force. Jules even took a few punches. Serenity's continuous crying and shouting behind proved futile. After everyone left, the two collapsed on the ground with expressions of utter despair. 3 months after the apocalypse outbreak, snow had already piled up to the 10th floor. Those in lower floors were either buried alive or desperately squeezing into higher floors. Fortunately, the current location has low occupancy. However, with banging sounds heard from 2 or 3 floors below in recent days, people have already moved in. This is absolutely no time for complacency. Ever since Jules traded Serenity to a scar-faced man for a small piece of bread, he never paid attention to them again. It's been 6 months into the apocalypse, and I realize I've become somewhat isolated from the world. During this time, I particularly love staying in my greenhouse, watching the vibrant green vegetables. Only then do I feel truly alive. The current situation has improved slightly, with the government stepping in to maintain control and distributing some supplies to survivors, though scarce. It still offers a glimmer of hope to those at their wits' end. However, I know full well that the current harmony is superficial. Once the extreme cold passes and we plunge directly into extreme heat, the situation will become even worse than before. I now listen to the radio every day, as electricity was completely cut off just 1 month after the apocalypse began. 5. Apart from the very few with solar power capabilities, only government facilities can barely maintain normal electricity supply. Attention all surviving compatriots, due to the severe situation. After careful consideration, our country has decided to build shelters at the following locations. Hearing this news, I was somewhat stunned. Why hadn't I heard about any shelters in my previous life? I decided to observe further, as taking one wrong step could lead to an abyss. I've been thinking a lot these past few days, and finally made a phone call. It was answered almost immediately after dialing. "Hello, who is this?" Hearing that deep voice in my ear, I felt an inexplicable urge to cry, "Phoenix, I'm at Emerald Court, can you come pick me up?" Not hearing a response, I picked up the phone and saw the call was still connected. Suddenly, a voice came through the phone. "Alara, is that you? Stay right there, protect yourself, I'm coming right away." Suddenly, there was the sharp sound of a chair being pushed back abruptly. I quickly hung up the phone and composed myself. To be honest, I didn't know how to face Phoenix right now. I can't really be considered a complete orphan. I just got lost as a child, and my biological parents adopted Phoenix. The first time I saw Phoenix, I was crying while eating instant noodles by the roadside. I still remember how he looked disgusted yet pulled out tissues to clumsily wipe my face. Later, when I was taken home, Phoenix became my nominal older brother, while my biological parents were no longer around. Later, I fell in love with Phoenix. Then later, he looked at me with disgust and called me disgusting. Finally, I ran away. Completely escaping from Phoenix, changed all contact information. No one could find me. In my previous life, at the moment of my death, it seemed like I saw Phoenix holding me with a terrified expression. In this life, I actually heard news about him on the radio. Perhaps my previous life was real, but that doesn't matter now. I just want to survive, since Phoenix seems to be doing well now. There's no reason for his sister to be living in fear alone outside. Although their own supplies could last for several more years without issue, the unknown dangers are far more terrifying, with extreme heat being the greatest challenge they'll face ahead. Originally thought Phoenix wouldn't come for a long time, since he never seemed to particularly favor them before, perhaps because they lacked a sense of security, being too clingy and annoying to others. Never expected that by evening, Several modified snow vehicles would arrive downstairs. I was preparing dinner when the door was knocked, and upon hearing it, I instinctively checked the surveillance camera. Phoenix seemed to know I was watching him. As he looked directly at the camera, his intense gaze frightened me so much that I immediately opened the door. The moment the door opened, I was pulled into a tight embrace. His hold was so strong it felt like he wanted to merge me into his body. I noticed two other people beside me and gave Phoenix a slight push. "It's so cold outside, come in and talk. I just happened to cook something." As soon as we entered my safe house, a slightly chubby young man in camouflage exclaimed, "Girl, your place is really nice, much warmer than outside." Then seeing my precious greens, they exclaimed in surprise again. Phoenix looked a bit doubtful too, but ultimately didn't voice the question. Originally I only prepared food for myself, but now 3 grown men suddenly showed up. This amount of food is clearly insufficient. It's been a while since I had hot pot anyway. With them here, I don't have to worry, so might as well enjoy it to the fullest this time. Quickly arranged all the ingredients. During this, Phoenix and I tacitly avoided mentioning past events, as if they had never happened. "Phoenix, your sister is truly capable, graceful in the living room and skilled in the kitchen. Heh, do I look like your future brother-in-law?" After saying this while rubbing his hands, he was immediately kicked by Phoenix. After eating, I was cleaning up in the kitchen when Phoenix suddenly slipped in, took the bowl from my hands, and started tidying up on his own. "Phoenix, do you believe in past lives and reincarnation?" Phoenix paused and said, "Alara, don't say these words to anyone else." I realized I was wrong. I used to be too fixated on things. Isn't relying on a highly capable brother a good choice? After saying this, she left Phoenix in the kitchen, but I regret it now. Phoenix murmured while watching Alara's retreating figure, but no one could make out what was said. Soon I packed up my belongings and returned to the safe house with Phoenix. However, the stockpiled supplies couldn't be moved all at once. Several vehicles came this time to pick up survivors too, so we could only notify people to collect the rest later, but I didn't plan to keep everything for myself. I gave half of it to the state. When they were suffering, the country did not abandon them, so this is also considered a gesture of my own goodwill. Later, I told Phoenix about the extreme heat following the extreme cold. I don't know how he communicated it to the higher-ups, but all bases are actively preparing for the apocalypse, inspired by China's actions. Other countries also began to take initiative. People around the world united and worked together to face this global catastrophe. 6. Although there are always some attention seekers jumping around and stirring up trouble, it's nothing serious. Disasters keep evolving, but humanity keeps progressing. I participate in post-disaster reconstruction work every day, watching people fall one by one, yet seeing others stand up again. Witnessing these scenes, my heart burns with passion. This, I know, is the power of the people. Suddenly seeing an iron rod about to fall precariously, with a child just over 10 years old standing beneath it. He had spoken to me this morning, saying that even if his parents were gone, this place was still his home. Without thinking much, I pushed him aside with all my strength. The iron rod struck heavily on my chest. It really hurts. I don't like the metallic taste in my mouth, but I can't control it at this moment. My mind is incredibly clear. It feels like my previous life also ended today. It seems I still can't escape this fate. The scene before me gradually blurred. I seemed to see Phoenix running over, his mouth shouting something. I tried hard to listen, but couldn't make it out. I also saw that child clutching my hand, crying incessantly. I tried to curl my lips, wanting to smile, but it seemed I couldn't even do that anymore. My world plunged into complete darkness. I became a vegetable, the best outcome in this misfortune. Every day Phoenix would come and chatter by my ear, unbearably annoying. Many years later, humanity also welcomed its own dawn. As everything gradually improved, the rising sun shone warmly upon me, and my slightly twitching fingers also represented my dawn. Story 2. My scumbag father passed away, leaving my half-brother $1,000,000 in inheritance and a mansion worth tens of millions. I, however, only received 50,000 yuan and a dilapidated old house in the urban village, holding the property deed. My younger brother smiled obscenely. It's already good enough that the old man was willing to leave you something. That old house is dirty and shabby, which suits you perfectly. It'll be more convenient for you to receive customers, won't it? He has liked to spread vulgar rumors about me since he was a child, and later he even had his friends take turns to abuse me. I originally wanted to kill him with my own hands, but 3 days later, an extreme heat wave hit, the city lost water and electricity, and he was trapped on the 33rd floor of the high-rise building, unable to move an inch. I, on the other hand, had a sufficient stock of food in the dilapidated old house and was enjoying delicious food and drinks. A month later, my younger brother, who had become as thin as a skeleton, was carried out by the medical staff and died in front of me in despair. Reincarnated, he excitedly wanted to exchange houses with me. In this life, it should be me who lives, I sneered. Stupid people are still stupid no matter how many times they are reborn. Do you think that just by changing houses, you will definitely be able to survive? 1. My scumbag father passed away, leaving more than 1 million yuan in savings, 2 houses, and a SUV. The distribution of the inheritance was as biased as when he was still alive. My half-brother Charles inherited a newly renovated luxury penthouse worth tens of millions, 1 million yuan in savings, and that car, however, was only allocated 50,000 yuan and a dilapidated old house in the urban village that had been decorated decades ago. When the will was being read, even the lawyer cast a sympathetic look at me, meeting the lawyer's gaze. I suddenly realized that I had been reborn. I was back 3 days before the extreme heat arrived. Just as the lawyer was about to hand the property deeds to Charles and me, Charles suddenly changed his mind. He rushed over and snatched the property deed from my hand, and then pushed me hard. I don't want the penthouse, I want that dilapidated old house, bitch, I want to exchange it with you. The lawyer was confused by him and stepped forward at a loss to help me up. I slowly stood up, holding my bruised hand, and smiled at the lawyer, but there was no trace of a smile in my eyes. I almost immediately realized that Charles must have been reborn too, because with his selfish character, he would never have considered exchanging with me otherwise. Sure enough, he hugged the property deed tightly and mumbled to himself, in this life, it should be me who lives. Although I was reborn, it was impossible for me to go back to that old house again, but I wouldn't let him get what he wanted so easily either. Without hesitation, I slapped Charles and snatched the property deed back. Charles covered his face in disbelief. Bitch, how dare you hit me? I sneered. So what if I hit you? You don't even know how to respect your elder sister. Why should I exchange with you? Charles first clenched his fists as if he wanted to fight back, then frowned and looked at me suspiciously. Weren't you the most cowardly before? Why are you suddenly so irritable? Do you know something too? He suspected that I had also been reborn, and of course I couldn't let him find out. I remained calm. You've bullied me so many times before. Do I need a reason to hit you? Seeing that my calmness didn't seem fake, a calculating look flashed in Charles's eyes, and he held back his anger and pleaded with me humbly. Yes, I know I was wrong. Consider the new house as my way of making amends to you. You've made a great deal. Hurry up and exchange with me, looking at his submissive appearance. I almost laughed out loud. Charles, you finally got what you deserve. I didn't agree to him. Instead, I kicked him twice more forcefully. Charles endured it again and again, but finally lost his temper. His fist came at me with a whistling sound. You fucking bitch. Don't be ungrateful, will you? I'll kill you. I snorted coldly, easily caught his fist, clenched it, and twisted it hard. Bending his arm into an extremely painful angle, Charles let out a scream instantly, and beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. He cried out in pain, Sister, 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 I was wrong, I won't do it again, please let me go. I had no expression on my face. He couldn't stand it just because I broke his hand. Then what about the despair that pierced my bones when his friends took turns to abuse me in the past life, too? In the past life, Charles didn't exchange houses with me, the day he got the property deed. He couldn't wait to invite his cronies to have a party in the new house. Halfway through, he called me over, saying that after all these years, he realized he was wrong and wanted to apologize to me for the mistakes he made when he was young. I must have been out of my mind to actually go. When I got there, I realized that he just wanted me to go and pour drinks for them. In just one afternoon, he turned the new house into a mess, with wine bottles and vomit all over the floor. As soon as his cronies saw me, they started to heckle, Is this your cheap elder sister? Goodness, with this figure and appearance, no wonder she can earn money by spreading her legs. Brother Tian, you're really generous. You're willing to call her here for us to have fun with. Leaning against the door, Charles said proudly, That's right, I told you that if you hang out with me, I'll make sure you have a good life. Furious, I slapped him hard and turned to leave. However, he chased after me in a rage and dragged me back to the new house. I don't want to recall what happened next, anyway, except that he thought it was too dirty and didn't participate. None of his friends spared me. They tortured me for a full 5 hours, and he, on the other hand, held a glass of red wine leisurely, turning a deaf ear to my cries for help, and even recorded the video with great interest. Are you guys capable? With just this little ability, I'd be ashamed to post it online. In the end, he threw me into the dilapidated old house like a worn-out doll. I was covered in injuries and didn't even have the strength to call the police. When I finally gathered some strength and tenaciously went to the hospital to have my injuries examined and reported the case to the police, trying to make him pay the price, the extreme heatwave came, in the extremely hot weather of over 50 degrees Celsius. No one could spare the time to fight for my dignity in the past life. Charles was only starved to death due to a shortage of supplies. While I suffered 100 times more pain than him, he has just been reborn, and his memory hasn't been erased. I don't even know where he got the nerve to beg me to spare him and still want to exchange houses with me and let me die. With new and old grudges combined, I gave Charles a good beating. My martial arts skills are not just for show. They are real and deadly moves honed in battles with evil neighbors. After the extreme heatwave arrived, Charles was beaten black and blue by me. The lawyer next to us was afraid that I might kill him and quickly stopped me. I rubbed the tip of my shoe on Charles's clothes in disgust and put forward a condition. I can exchange the house with you, but I also want the car and the money. Charles's chest heaved violently, and his knuckles cracked. He almost gritted his teeth and squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. Okay. Even the lawyer was shocked by his forbearance and took a few more glances at him. I curled my lips contemptuously. I knew he would agree. Based on my understanding of him, he must be thinking that as long as I die in the extreme heat, he can get everything back. Enduring it now is nothing. But he doesn't know that what awaits him in the dilapidated old house is not paradise, but hell. 3. After the lawyer helped us complete the transfer procedures and we exchanged the property deeds, Charles gave me a cold look and then hurried off to stock up on supplies. There were less than 3 days left before the extreme heatwave arrived. He had died once and was extremely scared. I didn't rush to stock up on supplies either. Instead, I bought a large batch of sunshade building materials from the building materials market. The new house was on the 33rd floor. A penthouse of more than 300 square meters, and the whole house had luxurious floor-to-ceiling windows. Under normal circumstances, the view would be excellent, but under the extreme heat, these glasses would turn the house into a deadly oven. I didn't know why Charles wasn't roasted to death in the past life, but if I wanted to survive in the penthouse, I had to solve this problem first, ignoring the surprised looks of the decorators. I spent a lot of money to have them wrap the floor-to-ceiling windows with heat insulation materials layer by layer. At the same time, I also installed an extra set of heat insulation curtains that were 5 layers thick. After solving the problem of the glass, I bought 2 home generators, 2 large refrigerators, and 3 large air conditioners overnight. The extreme heat would only last for a month, and I didn't need to stock up on supplies on a large scale. I just drove the SUV to a large supermarket and bought all the necessary food, daily necessities, and medicine. I had a hard life in the past life, and in this life, I planned to treat myself well, so I bought expensive foods that I usually couldn't afford but really craved: imported milk, fruits, Australian lobsters, Norwegian salmon, etc. I even bought a box of 12 Muyang King durians, which cost 600 yuan each, to stock up on. As for the water resources, which were the most scarce under the extreme heat, I directly ordered a full 50 boxes of mineral water from the water delivery company to be delivered to my door for emergency use. I wasn't worried that someone would come to rob me of my supplies. Unlike the dilapidated old house in the past life, the new house was in a new development with a low occupancy rate, and there were almost no neighbors. Moreover, as soon as the extreme heat arrived, the water and electricity would soon be cut off. Without the elevator, no one would be willing to climb 33 floors to rob me of my supplies. I was safe, for, the day before the extreme heat arrived, when I was organizing the freezer at home, I suddenly felt a severe headache, and a strange voice sounded in my head. Hello, host, I am your monitoring system. In view of your excellent performance in the extreme heat environment in your past life, this system has specially opened a special monitoring perspective for you according to your current most urgent wish. P.S. This system is specially designed for the period of extreme heat and provides continuous service. Please note that once the extreme heat subsides, the system will automatically exit. It is recommended that the host make full use of it during this period. A large screen appeared in the void, and it actually recorded Charles's every move in real time. I was a bit speechless, since I had awakened the system. Couldn't it give me something more useful? What's the point of giving me this lousy monitor? Who wants to keep looking at Charles's unlucky face? I silently complained in my heart. The system detected my thoughts and said after a moment of silence, don't you want to see with your own eyes how he brings about his own destruction in the dilapidated old house? Well, I really do. Charles was in the dilapidated old house at this time, bragging to his friends on the phone. Let me tell you, as soon as the sun comes out tomorrow, the temperature will soar from 30 degrees to 50 degrees. If you don't want to be roasted to death, find a place to hide quickly. His friends, of course, didn't believe it and mocked him. Brother Tian, have you read too many doomsday novels? You actually believe that the temperature can soar overnight? Do you really think the meteorological station is useless? Charles leisurely shook his leg. Believe it or not, you'll know tomorrow. Don't blame me for not reminding you then. He hung up the phone with a snap, still sounding proud. I knew that Charles didn't remind his friends out of kindness, he just wanted to show off his foresight, but he didn't know that it was this reckless show-off that accelerated his death. He was reborn once, but he was still so stupid. He thought that since I could survive smoothly in the dilapidated old house in the past life, he could definitely do it too. But he could never imagine what kind of living hell the safe house he thought of would become under the ravages of the extreme heat. In the past life, he was too weak. Before he died, he only saw that I was still alive, but he didn't notice that I was covered in injuries and was actually already on the verge of death. Of course, I wouldn't tell him the truth. I was even eagerly looking forward to seeing his desperate expression when he escaped from the dilapidated old house, if he could really escape alive. 5. The extreme heatwave arrived as scheduled. The notice issued by the experts said that there was a large-scale solar flare eruption, and the extreme heat would last for 3 days. The public was advised to stay calm and avoid going out during the period of extreme heat. The notice was exactly the same as in the past life, but I knew that the experts were wrong. The extreme heat would last for a whole month, getting hotter day by day. In the past life, due to the nationwide suspension of work and classes, some netizens jokingly said, "Thank you for the extreme heat," which gave the vast number of working people a holiday, but not everyone was so carefree. There were panic buying sprees everywhere, and prices soared sharply. Air conditioners, fans, freezers, etc., for cooling were sold out directly, and they were hard to buy even with a lot of money. In the past life, I didn't have the money, couldn't get an air conditioner, and was reluctant to buy one. I could only spend the initial period of extreme heat by soaking in the inflatable swimming pool I found in the old house and blowing on the old electric fan, but this life was different. As soon as the temperature reached 50 degrees Celsius, Charles couldn't wait to call me to show off. "Bitch, how dare you hit me? Now you're trapped on the 33rd floor and can't come down, right? I'm telling you, the extreme heat will last for a whole year. You're doomed." I had just woken up from my 2-meter-wide bed and was preparing to make myself a sumptuous breakfast. After hearing his words, I calmly glanced at the thermometer. With the help of the 2 air conditioners, the indoor temperature was very comfortable, only 25 degrees Celsius. I yawned. "I don't understand what you're talking about. What extreme heat?" I motioned for the system to show me the monitor and clearly saw Charles's hand holding the phone pause, and he gritted his teeth. "Don't you realize that the temperature outside has soared to 50 degrees now? Where are you now? You can't not be in the new house, right?" He was very anxious. I found it interesting and deliberately provoked him. "I'm here, but there's plenty of air conditioning in the new house, and it's not hot at all. I even feel cold." Charles stared at me in surprise. "Impossible. It's obvious that the water and electricity will be cut off as soon as the extreme heat arrives there. Don't be stubborn. You must be dying of heat already, right? Unlike me, I'm the one enjoying myself in the old house with the air conditioner on. Do you want me to let you hear the sound of the air conditioner to cool you down?" In the past life, Charles and his friends had a wild time in the new house for 3 days and 3 nights. When the extreme heat arrived, he was sound asleep in bed. He was awakened by the heat and then realized that the water and electricity in the new house had been cut off. Due to the low occupancy rate of the new house, the developer cut corners, and the infrastructure was simply not perfect. It was okay when there was no problem usually, but as soon as something happened, the machine started to break down completely. The soaring extreme heat was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Charles learned from his mobile phone what the experts said and naively thought that the extreme heat would really only last for 3 days. Thinking that there were still some alcoholic drinks and snacks left from the party at home, and he was unwilling to climb the 33 floors, he stayed in the new house all the time. When he was almost dying from the heat, he kept calling and abusing the property management company, urging them to deal with the problem quickly, but with the temperature reaching 50 degrees Celsius. Work and classes were suspended all over the country. Who would dare to go out and serve him? Charles missed the initial evacuation period. As time went by, the situation became more and more critical, and he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. According to the medical staff who carried him out at that time, he later survived by eating his own excrement. He thought that I would be just like him, trapped in the new house and helpless when the extreme heat came. So he couldn't wait to call and mock me. However, he didn't expect that I was not affected at all. When he didn't get a reply from me for a long time, he became even more anxious and roared, "Bitch, I'm talking to you. Are you fucking deaf?" I found his naivety ridiculous. No matter how many years passed, he was still as sensitive and inferior as when he was first brought into my home by my scumbag father. He would fly into a rage once his demands were not met. I slowly heated a cup of milk for myself with a small electric cooker and sipped it slowly. "Charles, don't you think you're the only one who was reborn? Let me tell you, just because I could survive in that dilapidated old house doesn't mean you can too, and just because you couldn't survive in the new house doesn't mean I can either." I had already made full preparations in the new house, so it didn't matter if I told him about the rebirth now. Because it was impossible for him to survive in the dilapidated old house. On the monitor, Charles's face instantly turned livid, his eyes widened like copper bells, and his breathing became rapid. He said shrilly, "This is impossible. I'm the chosen one. What right do you have to be reborn, you stinky bitch, slut?" I impatiently picked my ears. "If cursing me can restore your poor self-esteem, then go ahead, but if I were you, I'd first think about how to survive in the old house." "You're not really that naive to think that the old house is definitely safe, are you?" Charles's roar stopped abruptly, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. "Stella, what do you mean?" I sneered and hung up the phone directly. Charles had calculated well and stocked up a lot of supplies in the old house, but he didn't know what kind of demons lived in that dilapidated old house in the urban village. The supplies he hoarded were like a huge bait, attracting those people to skin him alive. Pick his bones clean, and leave nothing behind. 6. In the past life, when I just moved back to the old house, there was no food at home at all. I endured the hunger until after 8 o'clock in the evening when the sun set and the temperature dropped a bit before going downstairs to buy some food at a high price. Although the temperature had dropped at that time, it was still around 45 degrees Celsius. I almost returned to the old house sweating profusely, however. There were several big men blocking the door of the house. They blatantly robbed me and asked me to hand over all the food. Of course I refused. "There are still things for sale downstairs. The extreme heat will only last for 3 days. You don't have to rob me, do you?" The leading big man spat. "Cut the crap. We've all been hungry for a day. It's so hot outside and things are expensive. Only a fool would go out, if you're sensible. Hand it over quickly," he grinning savagely. "Don't think we don't know. That sissy who sent you back yesterday said that you're just a prostitute. If you serve us brothers well now, when the extreme heat is over, we promise to patronize your business." Under the pressure of their large numbers, I didn't dare to argue anymore and humiliatingly gave up the things. The sound insulation in the urban village was poor. The big man's shouts spread through several floors, but no one helped me. Everyone closed their doors and windows tightly. After they left, there were still people knocking on the door maliciously, also wanting to borrow food from me, but it was only the first day of the extreme heat. The water and electricity in the urban village hadn't been cut off yet. Those people clearly had the ability to solve the problem themselves, but they all came to bully me in this life, perhaps because Charles was a man and he didn't go out to buy things. No one came to look for him for the time being. Charles was on tenterhooks at home for 2 days. After finding that nothing happened, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Damn it, I knew that bitch was deliberately scaring me. She's just a woman who could survive here in the past life. I'm definitely stronger than her. When the extreme heat is over, I'll show that little slut." Damn it, I was just confused for a moment and forgot that as long as I make good preparations, I can survive anywhere after being reborn. "I've let that stinky bitch off too easily," he cursed and called his cronies, bragging to them about how comfortable his life was. The big refrigerator, the big air conditioner, and the table full of delicious food made his friends extremely envious. They all asked him where he was and begged for help. After being scared by me, Charles became a bit more sensible. No matter how they tried to trick him, he didn't reveal his address. I sneered a few times while looking at the monitor, and directly asked the system to take a screenshot of the piled-up supplies in his house, download it to my mobile phone, and post it online together with the address of the old house with the caption, "I've built a safe house for the end of the world. Should I be proud? Welcome everyone to come and spend the summer heat with me." 7. This post was quickly topped the hot search list, with hundreds of thousands of likes and shares. Damn it. What a beast. I'm so hot at home that I can't even eat. But the poster can still enjoy delicious food and drinks while blowing 5 big air conditioners. Is this the gap between people? I'm so tired. No. Is the poster a moron? The extreme heat will only last for 3 days. Is it necessary to buy 5 air conditioners and stock up so many supplies? So pretentious. Reply to the above. You can't be sure. Haven't you noticed that the temperature has been getting more and more abnormal in recent years? Maybe this extreme heat is a precursor to the end of the world. I support the poster for being prepared. P.S. Aren't you afraid that someone with ulterior motives will covet your address if you expose it? Come on, talking about the end of the world at every turn. You've clearly read too many marketing accounts. I think the poster is just a person who sells air conditioners and runs a supermarket. He wants to trick people into coming to buy his supplies. There were all kinds of opinions on the internet. Some people even said that they would form a group to watch this show off after the extreme heat was over. Of course, Charles also came across this post. At first, he was greatly surprised and thought that I had installed a monitor in his house, but he searched every corner of the dilapidated old house and couldn't find it, so he called and cursed. Bitch, what means did you use? You just can't stand to see me doing well and want to kill me, don't you? I leaned on the sofa and sucked on the durian. Yes, Charles said angrily. If you're not benevolent, don't blame me for being disloyal. He also posted my address on various online forums, boasting that there were jewels and food hidden in my place, and most importantly, the owner of the house was a slut who would die of loneliness if she didn't see a man for a day. He tried to call on men to come to my house and kill me, but not everyone was as full of vulgar thoughts as him. As soon as his post was posted online, it was spontaneously reported and deleted by enthusiastic netizens. Are you crazy? You're almost dying of heat, and who's still thinking about that kind of thing? I checked that address. Any house there costs 2 or 3 tens of millions. People with such financial strength would be short of men. You should at least be more realistic in your dreams. I feel sorry for the lady owner of the house. She must have been pestered by some dark and twisted pervert again. Some despicable men who are useless themselves like to spread vulgar rumors and slander girls. I'll report every one of them I see. He failed to frame me, but he himself got into trouble in just one morning. It was enough for all the people who should have seen the post to see it. Bang, bang, bang. Open the door. The community is checking the water meter. The iron door of the dilapidated old house was knocked loudly, and a man's malicious voice sounded outside the door. Charles's cronies also had him in the group and asked, WC, Brother Tian, is this person in the photo you actually prefer to show off online rather than tell us where you are? That's so unkind. Charles's face instantly turned pale. He panicked. 8, open the door. I know someone is at home, you show off. Didn't you like showing off and inviting us to your house to escape the heat? Why don't you dare to open the door now that we're here, brother? Why don't we just forget it? I think the person in the house is just a poor and pretentious loser. We don't need to waste time on him. Shut up. Are you the big brother or am I? I say we open it. So we open it. Daniel, the big man who took the lead in robbing my supplies in the past life, surrounded the dilapidated old house with more than a dozen of his subordinates. Charles hid at home and didn't dare to open the door. He knew that once he opened the door, it would be all over. While dealing with his cronies, he frantically typed and insulted me, saying that I was born a liability, didn't deserve to live at all, and should have died just like my mother earlier. This sentence completely enraged me. I pinned a new comment at the top of the post that revealed his address. I'm laughing to death. There are really a few morons knocking on my door. They're so stupid. I won't open the door, let you die of heat. If you have the guts, break the door open. As soon as the comment was posted, Charles's angry roar and Daniel's furious shout sounded simultaneously. Stella, you son of a bitch, you bastard, who the hell are you calling a moron? Obviously, Daniel was also paying close attention to that post. With a dark face, he ordered his subordinates beside him. Brothers, go for it. Break open this bastard's door and teach him a good lesson on how to be a man. Yes, boss. After the sound of the door being pried open came, Charles didn't have the time to scold me anymore. He hurriedly moved tables and stools to block the door. However, the door lock was quickly pried open. One of Daniel's subordinates kicked the door hard, and the tables and chairs that Charles had painstakingly moved were as vulnerable as dominoes. Charles cursed damn it and picked up the chainsaw he had specially bought for self-defense beside him, roaring, Don't move, I'll saw anyone who comes in. I want to see who dares to come in. He threatened with the chainsaw in his hand, thinking he was fierce. Unexpectedly, Daniel and his group of people laughed mercilessly at him. Ha ha, boss, look at this moron. He's as skinny as a weakling and is still threatening us here. Hey, you weakling. Look at how nervous you are. I'm afraid you've even forgotten how to use the chainsaw, right? Hearing these taunts, Charles's face became even uglier. He was used to being conceited, and people around him had always only flattered him. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? Charles waved the chainsaw and rushed towards the other side aggressively, but the other side easily dodged. Subordinate No. 1 squatted down and swept Charles's legs with a sweep kick, making him kneel on the ground easily. The chainsaw fell to the ground and was quickly picked up by subordinate No. 2 and put on Charles's neck. Who were you calling a moron on the internet just now? Charles's face instantly lost its color, his body trembled involuntarily, and a pungent smell filled the air. He was actually so scared that he wet himself. 9. Charles didn't know that the group of people he threatened with the chainsaw, they were all vicious criminals who had served their sentences. The subordinate with the lightest criminal record had at least served 2 years in prison. The leader, Daniel, who was 43 years old this year, was sentenced to 23 years in prison for manslaughter and was just released last month. Decades of prison life didn't reform him. Instead, it stimulated his desire to commit crimes. After the extreme heat apocalypse completely arrived in the past life, he was the first to take the lead in disrupting the order, prying open the rooms of the whole building. robbing all the supplies, and tying up everyone and treating them like slaves. His subordinates found 3 pedal-powered generators in a certain household. These 3 generators laid the foundation for his tyranny. Under the temperature of 50 degrees Celsius, Daniel could still enjoy the cool breeze of the electric fan and drink ice-cold drinks. There were a total of 84 people in the building, excluding the old people and children who were roasted to death as soon as the extreme heat arrived. The remaining 35 people, regardless of gender, had to take turns pedaling the generators for him. Those who were obedient could exchange for a bite of food and water after pedaling the generator for 10 hours. Those who were disobedient would be starved for 3 days, accompanied by endless humiliation and abuse during that time. Usually, people would easily give in without 3 days. If there were still people who refused to be obedient, it was even easier. Just knock them out and throw them out. Under the temperature of 50 degrees Celsius, they could be turned into mummies in half an hour. During that month of extreme heat, almost all the people who were still alive were barely hanging on by a thread, while he and his subordinates lived a more comfortable life than an emperor. That period of time, full of stench and tyranny, like a purgatory, made me shudder every time I recalled it. Fortunately, in this life, it was Charles who would face these people instead of me. 10. After Charles wet himself from fear, Daniel and his group of people taught him a good lesson on how to be a man. The scene of him being beaten until his head was bleeding made me satisfied, and I drank 2 large bowls of iced mung bean soup. The soft and glutinous mung beans were soaked with water. With a gentle bite, I could feel the cool juice spreading in my mouth. Then, taking a sip of the sweet soup, each mouthful was like a cool breeze blowing in the hot summer. With the hard-working air conditioner, I couldn't feel at all that the temperature outside had reached a terrifying 49 degrees Celsius. It was as if I was on vacation in the Arctic. In contrast, on Charles's side, with a swollen face like a pig's head, he trembled and begged for mercy. "Bosses, I know I was wrong. You've vented your anger already. Can you spare me?" Daniel leisurely lay on the sofa, feeling the coolness brought by the air conditioner. When he heard these words, a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth with a cigarette in it. "Spare you? It's not impossible." Upon hearing this, a glimmer of hope and a trace of contemptuous sneer flashed in Charles's eyes. However, Daniel's next words were like a basin of cold water, dousing him completely. Daniel smiled sinisterly. "From today on, everything in this room of yours belongs to us. And then we'll spare you." "All right, you can get out now," Charles roared. "Why?" Charles's unwilling howl resounded through the sky, but Daniel and the others didn't care at all. Daniel waved his hand impatiently, and his subordinates sneered and threw Charles out of the door like garbage. Charles fell heavily to the ground. The rough cement floor scratched his head, and the high temperature of over 50 degrees Celsius outside made him sweat profusely. But Charles didn't pass out because of this. Because there was still a raging fire of anger in his eyes. The occupation of his supplies made Charles, who thought he could live comfortably and survive the apocalypse smoothly in this second life, feel unprecedented humiliation and anger. At this moment, his hatred for Daniel and his gang exceeded his hatred for me. With great difficulty, Charles sat up, wiped the sweat off his head, removed the blood from the corner of his mouth, and took out his phone to contact his cronies. Charles, I'm not someone to be trifled with. You're all doomed." 11. While Charles was meticulously planning his revenge, I had a wonderful afternoon nap. I hadn't been this leisurely for a long time. My biological mother passed away due to a heart attack when I was in my sophomore year of high school. As soon as she took her last breath, my scumbag father brought Charles home. That was when I found out that my scumbag father actually had an illegitimate son as old as this outside. In order to protect this illegitimate son, he and my mother pretended to be poor their whole lives, while my mother and I were squeezed into that moldy, dilapidated, and small house, worrying about our livelihood. Charles was able to enjoy a life of luxury. Even the money he spent on a pair of shoes was enough for my mother and me to cover our food expenses for 3 months. I still remember that when Charles was first brought home, my scumbag father said to me, "This is your younger brother, and from now on, you must serve him like a young master. Otherwise, don't blame me for disowning you as my daughter." Considering my mother's last words asking me to study hard, I swallowed my anger and served them for a year. During that time, I experienced countless instances of Charles's violence and abuse. The deep hatred made me choose a university far away from home as soon as I graduated from high school and cut off all relations with them. In fact, if that dilapidated old house actually belonged to my mother, I wouldn't have come back to claim the inheritance at all. After the extreme heat ends, I'm going to take back that dilapidated old house. 12. Brother Tian, it's a deal. We'll help you get the house back, and you'll give us half of the supplies, Charles's subordinate asked tentatively, double-checking with a hint of unease in his tone. It was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. But the temperature was still as high as 46 degrees Celsius. The air was filled with a searing heat that could almost roast people. With the wounds from the beating during the day and not having had a drop of water since being driven out, Charles felt extremely uncomfortable. Without even thinking, he angrily cursed in response to his subordinate's question, "Split, split, split. I've already said I'll divide it. Why keep asking? If you don't trust me, you can get lost. I didn't beg you to come and help me." He felt much better after scolding them, but the faces of his cronies all looked unpleasant. One of the subordinates said with a serious face, "Charles, we brothers came here out of kindness to help you. If you're like this, then it's really not worth it." The others also glared at him, and the atmosphere froze. Thinking about the upcoming plan, Charles's tone softened a bit. "All right, don't worry. Don't you know what kind of person I am? I will definitely keep my word. I'll give you not just half, but 2/3 of the supplies, okay." Although Charles painted a beautiful picture, there wasn't a trace of sincerity in his eyes or tone. Several subordinates exchanged glances and understood what was going on. One subordinate immediately wanted to leave, but was quietly held back by a few others. "Got it, Brother Tian, we'll follow your lead." A flash of mockery passed across Charles's face, and he commanded proudly, "That's more like it. All right, it's about time. Let's start the operation." 13. In the past life, the water and electricity in the dilapidated old house were cut off on the 6th day after the extreme heat arrived, and today was the 5th day. The order hadn't been disrupted yet, and most of the residents were just complaining incessantly, waiting restlessly for the extreme heat to pass. Only someone like Daniel, who ignored the law, would do the thing of seizing other people's supplies in advance. Charles and his group's plan was simple and brutal, that is, to turn off the power switch and wipe out Daniel and his gang when they came out to check. For this purpose, Charles and the others carried weapons on them, including kitchen knives, baseball bats, bricks, and so on. When the power switch was successfully turned off and the subordinates who came out to check were knocked unconscious one by Charles and his group, Charles showed off, thinking that victory was in the bag. "I thought they were really something. Turns out they're just a bunch of idiots." Unfortunately, Daniel wasn't a fool. After sending out 4 subordinates in a row and none of them came back, he immediately realized that something was wrong. He ordered his remaining subordinates to pick up chainsaws and rush out. The rumbling sound of the chainsaws made Charles's subordinates waver. They just wanted to rob the supplies and didn't want to risk their lives, so someone suggested retreating. But how could Charles agree? He immediately scolded that person harshly. However, Charles's behavior aroused public anger. That person sneered and gave a meaningful look, and the people around immediately understood his intention. Charles was still cursing, and the next second, he was stabbed through the back. "You." Charles stared in disbelief, his voice trembling as he tried to say something, but only a low growl could come out of his throat. Soon, he collapsed weakly to the ground and fainted. Watching the surveillance video, I quickly put down the cola and potato chips in my hand and applauded those who stabbed him. The system, understanding me very well, focused the camera on Charles's face. I didn't hesitate to slap Charles and snatched the property deed back. To that feeling of pleasure was like a photographer finally capturing the perfect moment after a long wait. The image of Charles in despair would become my most cherished treasure. Even more satisfying was that Daniel and his gang had already found Charles and his group, and a chaotic battle was on the verge of breaking out. The monitoring perspective the system gave me could only show within a 10-meter radius of Charles. But that was enough. The extreme heat was like a catalyst, intensifying the tyranny in Daniel's heart. I witnessed with my own eyes those cronies of Charles who had violated me in the past life being caught by the enraged Daniel. They were attacked with knives, with some having their hands chopped off at the lighter end and others having their throats directly slashed at the more serious end. The screams of those beasts were like the horns of the apocalypse, declaring Daniel's tyranny began. Charles, along with several people who weren't killed, were knocked unconscious and tied up by Daniel's subordinates. Just thinking about the living hell they would face in the future made me want to laugh. Giggle. I laughed so wildly that the system popped up. "Host, your laugh is so ugly. Please have mercy." 14. A month later, the extreme heat ended, and social order began to be restored. I called the police before Daniel and his gang could escape. Charles didn't actually die after being stabbed, after being beaten awake by Daniel and his gang. He dragged on for 3 days, pedaling the generator for them before finally taking his last breath. His subordinates were in a similar situation, and the one with the strongest vitality didn't survive beyond the 4th day. Before Charles died, he stared angrily with his eyes wide open and said something, but I couldn't hear it clearly, and I didn't care either. I only knew that the hatred from my past life had been avenged, and thanks to him, before the system completed its task and disappeared. I successfully intercepted the criminal evidence of Daniel and his group. In fact, even though the apocalypse had arrived, our people's police still remained on the front line to maintain social order. It was just that during the extreme heat period, many means of communication failed, which caused justice to be absent. After the extreme heat passed, I sent the criminal videos of Daniel and his gang to the police overnight. The police responded immediately, fully armed. And in less than 10 minutes, they apprehended Daniel and his group with lightning speed. The people who had been enslaved by them in the building were also rescued, but I didn't have any good feelings towards those people. In the past life, my home was the first one that Daniel pried open. That night, my screams lasted the whole night, but it was as if they were swallowed up by the endless darkness, without getting a shred of sympathy or assistance in return. If Daniel and his gang were the executioners who killed me, then the other people in the building were all accomplices. In the end, Daniel and his group were all sentenced to death. The land of that dilapidated old house was demolished and rebuilt because too many people had died there, and I even received more than 2 million yuan in demolition compensation. I thought the penthouse was unlucky to live in, as it would remind me of bad memories, so I sold it secondhand. So far, the balance in my account has risen to 25 million yuan. Such a large sum of money is enough for me to live a life without worrying about food and clothing for the rest of my life.